What's up, you guys, and welcome to another episode of Dark Sage's Interlude. I'm your host, Chase the Dark Sage, and this show, as usual, is brought to you by Beyond Beats and Cultures. This is the hip-hop show where basically I give you guys a bit of a look and peek into my world, my thoughts, the stuff that I really like when it comes to hip-hop. So, before we actually get into the video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe before we actually get started. You guys already saw the thumbnail, you guys already saw the title, but I gotta break some things down for you. I gotta intro this for you guys because I'm not gonna lie. When we reviewed Big Sean's 2024 album, Better Me Than You, I dogged on it. Like, I killed that album. Like, I thought that was one of Sean's, me personally, I think it was one of the more weaker performances. I wouldn't say his worst performance because there's definitely some albums that are not as good as that one, but that's not to say that album is good on its own. And I feel like I really dogged on it. And Big Sean was one of those artists, especially during the blog era, that I loved. Oh, I was loving Big Sean during the blog era. He was my guy. Now, funny enough, even though my co-host didn't want to review or talk about this album, he is the one that actually put me on the Big Sean. So that is the funniest part right here. I remember it because I remember going to his house. He was playing Volume 3, and I was like, yo, who is that guy? I like the cover. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna download the mixtape. And ever since then, I've been a Big Sean fan since Finally Famous Volume 3. Finally Famous came out and rolled around. At the time, I liked that album, but going back to some of those tracks as an adult, it didn't really age well. But then when we get to a mixtape like Detroit, which I think is one of Big Sean's best projects, I thought that album, well, mixtape at that point, is phenomenal. And it's back on streaming. Well, not back on streaming. It is now on streaming. So if you guys want to check that project out, go ahead, check that out. Detroit is a really good project. But then we got his second album, which I actually forgot the name, Hall of Fame. I was lost on Big Sean. At that point, I was just like, yo, like, is Big Sean only good during the mixtapes? This was during that era where it's like, yo, like, we getting like album quality mixtapes, but the albums ain't really hitting or doing what it's supposed to do. But then we get Big Sean's third album, which is to me one of, if not his best album, Dark Sky Paradise. We gotta talk about this album. This album came out February 24th, 2015. 10 years ago. I was a freshman in college. I remember when this album came out. Jesus, I feel so old. Like, I'm really unk now. But I remember when Big Sean put out that EP at first with a few songs on there. But he had that one song, I Don't F With You. And if you don't know that song, you had to have been living under a rock for 10 years because that song was huge, especially during that time, during the Vine era. Like, that song was huge. Like, I used that in a couple of Vines that I edited back then when I was doing Vine myself. And I Don't F With You, especially with the choice of putting E40 on there and Mustard on the production. Mustard on the production was fire. But having E40 on there, I'm cool with the verse now, but when I first heard it, I would skip that verse every single time when that song came on. But yeah, when we actually talk about Dark Sky Paradise, that was a really good single to release for that album. Now, I'm pretty sure it wasn't intended for the album. He was just putting some songs out, putting some feelers out, and that was the one that actually really worked. So he's like, yo, I gotta put this on the album. This is really before streaming was as huge of a thing as it is now itself. But let's go ahead and talk about it. We could talk about some of the deluxe edition tracks as well, which we're not really going to that much because there's not really much to talk about when it comes to those deluxe tracks. But this is Big Sean's first #1 album. This is his best-selling album to date at that time. And let's be real, with some of the singles that he had on this project, it makes sense. Now, when we actually go through the track listing right here, there's 12 tracks. This is a really concise body of work. 49 minutes. I gotta say, Big Sean did his thing on this album. Now with the deluxe tracks, they cool, but Big Sean really did his thing on the original track listing. But when we get to an intro like Dark Sky, Skyscrapers, where I think Big Sean did a really good intro for the album right here. Then we get a song like Blessings featuring Drake, which this is without Kanye because there is a version with Kanye West, but I believe Kanye West and Drake, they kind of like, I don't know, Drake and Kanye West have been beefing for so long, I don't even know when it started or where it started exactly. But then we get a song like All Your Fault featuring Kanye West. That song is so hard. The actual start of this album right here, like, this album really doesn't slow down, and that could be a detriment to the actual album itself. But this album right here, the way that it goes, it starts off on a really high, super high energy, and I just love it because, especially with some of the production choices that Sean made with actually getting some of these beats right here, I'm like, Sean, you are cooking right now with this album. A song like All Your Fault with Kanye West and Kanye having a verse, Big Sean having the second verse, and then Kanye and like Big Sean kind of sharing the third verse itself. Really good. I Don't F With You. I don't really need to say anything about that one. Play No Games, a really good sounding song with Chris Brown and Ty Dolla $ign. This is one of them songs that I heard on the radio, and when I first heard it, I'm like, yo, this got to be on the radio, and it ended up being on the radio. Then we get a song like Paradise, produced by Mike Will Made It, and this is a song where Big Sean is basically rapping. Like, yeah, he has a hook. The hook is weak, but it's basically there for you to see him display his ability to rap in terms of like how many flows he could really like display at this time, which I think that he did a really good job at that. Rapping wise, we could talk about that later. But then we get a song like Win Some Lose Some, which I thought it was a cool song. I didn't think it was bad. Then we get a song like Stay Down, and then we get a song like I Know, which is to me a preview to 2088. And if you guys don't know what 2088 is, it's a group comprised of Big Sean and Jhené Aiko, and it's more songs like in this vein of like I Know, like off this album right here. When I first heard I Know, oh, especially during my college era, oh, this was my vibe. I was in my bag. And then when they came out with the 2088 album, oh my God, that was my bag too. I'm sorry. Like I gotta glaze a little bit. Then we get to the song Deep featuring Lil Wayne, which this is during that era of Lil Wayne where I'm just like, anything Wayne, I'm not trying to hear it. And this verse helps cement and remind me of that because I wasn't trying to hear it. But then we get track 11, One Man Could Change the World, which obviously you could tell from the title what type of track that is, and it's a pretty good track overall. And then we get the outro track, which I thought was good as well. Now, the deluxe edition tracks, Party Next Door, I did not like him on the song. I like what the song was about, Deserve It, with him talking about his come up and like how he earned who he is today, like him getting the house that Ye showed him when they was spinning around the block of like all those big houses. Then we get a song like Research featuring Ariana Grande, which I thought was cool. Then we get Platinum Wood, which to me I thought was eyed as well. Like I said, these bonus tracks really ain't much to really talk about right here. Number 13 could have really been a solid song if Party Next Door was not on that hook. Jeez. But some of the production credits on here, I mean, I saw Boy Wonder, T Minus, Mike Will Made It, Key Wayne, DJ Dahi, DJ Mustard, Kanye West, obviously. Big Sean had a really good ear for production on this project right here. I'm not gonna cap on this. And he had a lot of hits with Blessings, All Your Fault, I Don't F With You, Play No Games. I really don't count Paradise as one. That might have been one later. And I believe One Man Can Change, which is one of those like inspirational songs, like, you know, you could change the world basically, which, I mean, some can, not everybody. But with a last name like Anderson, you have to come, you have to show out on a project like this. And honestly, with Big Sean's performance on this project, performance wise, I think he did a really solid job. He used multiple flows. He didn't sound stagnant. He sounded energized. He sounded like inspired. Like he had that fire. He had that passion in him to do a good job. Now, when it actually comes to Big Sean's lyricism, I know it's a point of contention for some people. Big Sean is definitely Big Sean. Like, he's gonna have them corny bars. Like, your girl sent me so many naked pictures that I don't got no more data. Like, there's so many corny bars on this album. Like, I'm just forgetting some of them because Big Sean is one of those rappers that, when it comes to punchlines, he has some of the corniest ones in hip hop that I've heard from a mainstream artist. Like I said, when it comes to Big Sean's rapping, I can see why people don't really mess with him. I love Big Sean. I think he's a talented rapper. But yeah, that's going to be like the biggest point of contention when it comes to this album right here, because production wise, it's there. Songwriting wise, it's also there. The lyricism is going to be, like I said, the biggest point of contention, but that's going to be for anything Big Sean in general. So if you don't like Big Sean's lyricism, you shouldn't listen to anything Big Sean, because Big Sean, he's going to be Big Sean. Now it's just depending on like what type of beats he get on, his subject matter. That's going to really elevate the corniness itself, because if it's a high energy song, the cornier the bars. If it's a more serious song, the bars are still going to be corny to a degree, but they're not going to be like super extra corny. But I think Big Sean did a really good performance on the song. I think some of the features did a really good job on these tracks as well. I thought overall that this is a really solid album, and looking back at it 10 years, this still sounds good. Like, I loved all of this. I was singing along to all the words, and I could be blinded by nostalgia because, like I said, I was a freshman in college. I was making songs to some of these on Vine. I mean, videos to some of these songs on Vine, and like, I just have an attachment to this album right here. This, Detroit, and Detroit 2 are my favorite Big Sean projects. But yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it still holds up. I thought the production was really solid. The main thing about this album, especially when I'm comparing it to an album like Better Me Than You, like, yes, Better Me Than You is a much more mature album, especially with some of the things that Sean was going through at the time, him being a father for a few years, him being with Jhené Aiko, him having a lot of skin in the game at this point in his career. I think this album is a much better album because it sounds like there's more passion. The album is way better produced. And the songs that Sean does have on here compared to the other album, Better Me Than You, Yes, that is the more mature album, but it sounds a bit dull. It sounds like it's lacking some of Sean's actual character itself. And it sounds like Sean, for the most part, is coasting. I know some people love that album, especially big Sean fans. Me, if you want a mature Sean album, go to Detroit 2. Like, I don't get like why people keep saying like, oh, Better Me Than You is Sean's like mature album. Detroit 2 exists. Did we forget that Detroit 2 exists? I don't know. I didn't. But let me know what you guys think about this album right here, Dark Sky Paradise. 10 years in the game. Like, this is Big Sean's like best performing album at that time, his third album in the game. And Big Sean, he was one of them hit makers. He had a hit on every, well, did he have a hit on Hall of Fame? I don't really remember, but he dang near had a song on the radio at all times. And I love this project, man. I could go back to this project and I have no problems listening to it. I thought that the pacing was really good as well. Like I said, it's a super high energy. It starts mellowing out. The only thing I'll say that this album is kind of missing is more of those introspective songs. That's the one thing I can give credit to for Better Me Than You. It does have those introspective songs, but it felt like every single song on that project was an introspective song rather than, you know, you got to mix it up with some of the party songs. You got to mix it up with some of the actual good sounding songs itself. This album right here is missing some of the actual introspective tracks where we get a peek more into Sean's life, how he's thinking, where his career is gone. Like, yeah, we have the inspirational song with One Man Can Change. We have the song Deep kind of in the outro and Win Some Lose Some, but we don't have enough of those tracks on this project. But I mean, to keep it at 12 tracks and at 50 minutes, I think I'm cool with not many introspective tracks, because I thought that this album, for me, is a 4 out of 5. So yeah, let me know what you think about Dark Skies Paradise. Let me know what you thought about this album. Let me know if you've heard this album. Why haven't you heard this album? If you haven't heard this album, and will you be checking out this album? And if you heard this during the blog era at the tail end of it like I did, what do you think about it coming back to it 10 years later? Let me know in the comment section down below. This has been another episode of Dark Sage's Interlude. Before we head out though, like the video, hit the subscribe button to get more hip-hop content in your feed. And I gotta say thank you guys for watching. Dark Sage out. Peace.